Oh, all right. Well, yes, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming along this morning. My name is Sarah McCabe, and I've been contracted by the team at Switcher Thinking to talk to you today about this really fantastic kit, which is now available from lots and lots of libraries and CRCs across WA. Of course, before I begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands that I'm presenting from today, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past and present, as well as acknowledging all of the traditional owners of the lands that you are coming from across today, across WA. Okay, so just before we get started, a little bit of background about myself. I've worked in the sustainability field for 20 years or so. For the last 10 or so of them have been focused on solar, energy efficiency and electric vehicle projects. And I've worked in local government, done lots of solar and energy efficiency projects on public buildings. And now in my current other life, I work on, do similar stuff, but with non-profits, but more providing sort of advice and doing business cases and things for them. I'm also very keen retrofitting my own home. I've done a lot of things there. And so when Switcher Thinking suggested I create a workshop about the energy audit kit and dig into the detail about using some of the equipment in there, gave me a chance to learn a little bit more about thermography and things like that. I jumped at the chance because this is a really interesting part of home energy efficiency. Just a bit of a disclaimer, which I always say, I'm not an electrician, nor am I a plumber. So if you're going to ask me some sort of detailed electrical or plumbing question, I'm not your person. And I'm also not a thermographer. And it was great when I went to the training about learning how to use the thermal camera. There's a lot of physics behind how thermal cameras work, and that part of it a little bit beyond me. But what I've hoped is I've been able to distill all the main stuff that you're just going to know, that only the things that you need to know to check your house, or the main, and find the sort of main energy guzzling culprits in your own home. I've also prepared this workshop to the best of my ability using my experience and research, but yeah, I am only human. So please do your own research if there's anything that you're not entirely sure about. So Switcher Thinking, who are they? Switcher Thinking is a sustainability initiative that was founded in 2002 by the City of Armidale, the City of Gosnells and the Shire of Serpentine-Jarrahdale. They all work together as the Southeast Regional Energy Group, and Switcher Thinking is kind of their community education arm. And the primary objective of Switcher Thinking is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions through lots of different energy, water, sustainable building, waste, sustainable transport initiatives. They do all sorts of good work, and they're currently working with 16 member local governments across Perth to help empower and educate the residents and businesses in those local government areas. A big part of that work is putting on lots of different workshops like this one. So if you're interested in the other work that they do, go and have a look at their website, follow them on all the socials, and I guess best of all is signing up to their e-news, because then you'll get all of the information about all of the events and programs and projects that they're running. This workshop, though, is a little bit special because it's different to Switcher's other programs, because it's part of the Switcher Thinking Energy Efficiency Pilot Program, which was launched last year and is funded and supported by the WA Government's Department of Energy and Economic Diversification. So this is a project that's being aimed at everyone across WA and not just at Switcher Thinking member councils. That project is funding a whole lot of free workshops on lots of different energy related topics. And I've also been doing some of the other ones on solar panels and electric vehicles and energy efficiency. But not just workshops, it's funding the energy audit kits, which are now available to borrow from more than 130 different libraries and community resource centres all around the state. So that's very exciting. And the kit is obviously what we're here to talk about today. So what are we going to talk about? First, I'm going to talk to you about the bigger picture and how the energy audit kit fits within a house going all electric and becoming all renewable. Then we will virtually unbox the kit, and we're going to go through each piece of equipment and how to use it, as well as some common ways that you can use them in a home to reduce energy use. And then you're also going to see some real life examples of things I have found when I've gone out and used the kits in different homes. So that's the plan for this workshop. I'm going to be referring to lots of links with further resources and information. Don't worry, you won't have to copy them down. I've already popped a link to it in the chat, so you can download it from there. There'll also be a QR code at the end, so you can save the document. At the end, we should have time for questions, and you are welcome to put questions in the chat, but I'm just not great at talking and answering questions at the same time. Kerry from Switch Your Thinking is online, so she may be able to jump on and answer the question while we're going. Otherwise, we'll come back to them at the end. So the bigger picture, I don't want to give you the impression that if you borrow the kit and use it, your electricities will magically decrease to nothing. The things that you can check with your energy audit kits are part of a much bigger picture. So I think most people have heard about the waste hierarchy, which is reduce, reuse, recycle. And there is something similar for energy, but no one's kind of been able to come up with a cute little saying for it. But I guess at the top of the pyramid, up the top here, the first thing you should be doing is reducing or avoiding your energy use as much as possible. Because obviously, if you can avoid having 10 air conditioners in your house, that's always going to be the cheapest because it saves you on the upfront costs and the ongoing running cost. So there's lots of things that you can do to reduce or avoid energy use in the first place. Then if you must have 10 air conditioners because you've worked out that's something you really need, that's when you go to energy efficiency. So if you really need those things, what are the most efficient options and how can you make that equipment run as efficiently as possible? Then if you have solar panels and a battery, or you're planning on getting solar panels and a battery in the future, by doing those two things, you're making it more likely that your solar panels and battery can cover your energy use as much as possible. And then you should also have some left over, which you can use to get off gas and shift to electric appliances. And that way you're not going to be paying for gas and all the service charges and things associated with that over here while you've got excess solar going for free. And then you might even also consider getting off fuel and using your excess solar to charge your car. So in real life, never works as neatly as that. The process often takes people a number of years. I'm still going after probably 10 years working on my house, but it's good to see the bigger picture when you embark on this journey. And of course, in the meantime, if you can't do some of those other things, using the kit is a really great, easy, cheap place to get started. So Rewiring Australia, if you want to find out more about going all electric, that's a fantastic organisation. Have a look at their website. They've crunched a lot of the numbers on what going all electric means for carbon emissions and for household bills. And you can see in that graph there what a huge difference it can make. And that's by making 6 key decisions, which is solar, battery, heat pump, hot water, induction cooktops, and finally electric vehicles, along with making your house as energy efficient as possible. And when I'm talking about the bigger picture, I also like to show people this graph because it shows you the big consumers that you need to look out for. And this is an excellent sort of starting point for investigating your energy use at home. So this is a breakdown of energy consumption in an average Australian home. You can see heating and cooling is the big one. And that's followed by appliances, so all of your appliances in aggregate, and then hot water. So I always encourage people not to lose sight of this graph when they're looking at their home. Working on your heating and cooling and your hot water is always going to give you much bigger cuts than worrying about some, tiny little 1 or 2 appliances. I know some people that have sort of borrowed the kit and used the PowerMate and then they've become fixated on what their modem, for example, is using. It's not a big consumer in the scheme of things. Remember the bigger picture. All right, so what's in the kit and how can it help you reduce your bills? So the kit's got lots of great stuff in it. It's got a PowerMate, a thermometer, a tap testing cup, but in my opinion, the most exciting device is the thermal camera. And these are super useful, quite expensive to buy and quite expensive even to hire. And it's been fairly common for libraries over East to loan them out for quite a long time, but less common over here. So it's really fantastic that the Energy Efficiency Pilot Program has allowed this technology to become more accessible to people who want to reduce their power bills and make their homes more comfortable. So when you open the kit, goes without saying, before you start, read the instruction manual, which has very important safety advice in it, and watch the instructional video as well, which Switch Your Thinking have put together. and they will give you all the sort of basic information on how to turn on the camera, how to switch on the power mate, that sort of thing. And they've got a list of things that you can use the equipment for and some sort of simple tests that you can run in your home. All right, so let's start on the thermal camera. And the thermal camera is a pretty amazing device. It basically shows temperature in a picture, and it's very sensitive. And to illustrate that, what you can see here is where I put my hand on a tiled floor for a few seconds, and you can see that heat signature there where the hand has been, and that will stay there for a little while. So that's only a very small difference in temperature, but you can see it quite clearly on the thermal camera. So because of this, as you can imagine, the thermal cameras are useful for lots of different things, mostly for like finding machinery and electrical faults because they can see where wiring might be getting hot or where there's friction in machinery that's causing heat. And that means it's not operating effectively and it shows you it's about to break down. So really useful for that. They're used for searches, for firefighting. Vets can use them to look at a zoo animal to see if it's got a temperature. They're really, but of course, also really useful for helping you reducing your heating and cooling bill. And it can help you do that in a few ways. The first one and the biggest one is checking your insulation. And the second one is checking for air gaps in your home. And it's also really useful for looking at your window coverings and finding other sources of heat, like thermal bridging. Sort of unrelated to heating and cooling, they can also be handy for a couple of things like improving for like other things that improve the sustainability of your home. So that's things like can be used for looking for water leaks and also for checking your fridge seals. So these are all the things that I've found that the thermal camera can be used for. If you are a borrower or you are working in a library or a CRC and your borrowers have come back and told you interesting things that they found, I would love to hear about it for future workshops. So, if there's other ways that people are using the thermal camera to improve their home sustainability, please do let me know. So using the camera is pretty easy and intuitive. You turn it on and that's just a little power button in the middle there. The yellow-orange colors are the high temperatures. The blue or purple colors are the cold ones. And as you move around and look at different things, the color scale is going to adjust based on the range of temperatures that you're looking at. So sometimes when you're moving it around and looking at things, you'll notice you just need to wait a little while until it settles because it's adjusting the temperature scale. Because the temperature scale adjusts based on what you're seeing, it might be that some things look sort of bright yellow, but they're not actually very much hotter than the things around it because it's all relative to the other temperatures. So it is good to check the actual temp as well. And the actual temperature, as you can see up the top of that picture, is shown up the top of the camera display. And that's measuring the little circle in the middle of the photo. When you look at your camera, there's actually different color scales that you can choose. Hopefully yours hasn't been changed, but if it has and it's been bothering you, there are instructions to factory reset the camera and it'll take it back to this pinky purpley one, which I think is really the best, easiest one to kind of use for checking your house. Again, if you've this has been lent out to someone with your library or CRC, or you've used it yourself, and if you're colorblind, I would love to know which of the scales works best for people who are colorblind. Also, other accessibility things that make it easier for people to use the camera, please do get in contact and let us know about them, and I can include them in the workshop. The other thing to know about the camera is it puts like a line drawing almost of an image over the temperature. And that just makes it clearer for you to see what you're looking at. Sometimes it can become misaligned. In fact, it's quite easy for it to become misaligned. So you can see in that picture there, the picture of my pipes is not lined up with the temperature. And that's quite easy to fix. The two little C-shaped kind of buttons around the power button, you just hold them and the top one's up and the bottom one's down. You just hold them down until the picture lines up. It's quite easy to fix. If you work in a library or a CRC, and I know you've probably received some instructions about resetting the kit when it comes back to you, but that's why it's probably important to do that, because to avoid confusion for people because, you know, if they've used it and the colors are all weird and the image is misaligned, it's just kind of going to create an annoying experience for people. The other thing that Switch Your Thinking have found is that they need to be charged with a wall socket. Otherwise, they're seeing some issues where they don't turn on properly. So, yeah, if you're recharging them when they come back to the library, it's best to do that with a wall socket rather than trying to plug it into a computer. And the other thing to be aware of, I guess, is that people may have taken pictures on the camera, and so they might need to be deleted or reset after it comes back. So when you're using the thermal camera, it's really useful to understand how heat moves in a home. So to address your heating and cooling energy use, you need to think about an esky. So an esky is insulated all around. If you put a teeny tiny heater or an air conditioner in an esky, it would get hot or cold very quickly, and it would stay that way for a long time without a lot of additional energy input. So a house, of course, quite different to an esky. You need air in a house and airflow in a house. But the idea is, I guess, if you can identify the areas where heat and cool are being lost from your home and reduce that as much as possible, you're going to reduce the number of hours you need to run your heating and cooling for, and therefore reduce your energy bills by quite a lot. So this is a really great diagram. It comes from the Your Home Technical Manual, which is completely available online, and it's in that resource link I sent you. And that shows you where heat is lost and gained in a house. And you can see that the ceiling is always the big one. And then that's followed by the windows and also air leakage. So if you can reduce heat transfer in those areas, and you'll never do it entirely, but if you can reduce it, it's going to make your house much easier to heat and cool. And finding those sources of heat or cool loss is where the thermal camera comes in really handy. So now you know that kind of background. You can walk around your home or your building, point at the thermal camera at different things, see if you can see any spots that seem weirdly hot or cold. And so, well, you can just do that. It's not, you know, rocket science. You can walk around and have a look at hot and cold spots. To get the most out of the camera, it is actually useful to know a few technical kind of tricks. And the very first thing you need to know is that it really helps to have a large temperature difference between the inside and the outside of the building. And it should ideally be more than 10 degrees. So ideally, you would use the camera on a really hot or cold day. But obviously your borrowers, I know that there's a waiting list sometimes for the energy kits, and so you kind of have to borrow it when you can get it. So in that case, just try and use it at the hottest time of the day. And it really helps to crank up your aircon and your heater to increase the temperature difference as much as possible. It might be a great promotional opportunity when you know some hot weather's coming up. You might want to do a social media post or something like that saying, hey, would everyone like to borrow the kit? All right, the other thing to be aware of is your camera has a laser. And obviously, as you'll read in the safety advice, when you have the laser on, don't point it at a person or an animal. Don't point it at a mirror or anything like that. But the laser spot is important because if you're measuring temperature, what you need to do, if you want an accurate result, is to fill the spot with whatever you're measuring the temperature of. And that might mean you need to move closer to the object. So to turn the laser on, you need to press that little up the top. You see the arrow pointing to the little star kind of button there, and that's what turns the laser on. If you don't fill the spot up with the object you're taking the temperature of, it's going to be taking the average of the different surfaces that the spot is covering. So this is an example of where I've done it. I've used the spot to measure the temperature of the insulation on my hot water system, and all of the spot is on the object I want to measure. So the next tip involves ghosts and dancing. So shiny surfaces like gloss painted doors and windows will reflect the heat around them. So if there's anything in your room that's emitting heat, usually it might be a heater or a human or even a pet, that can be reflected in the surface and give you a slightly inaccurate reading. So you can see me here as a bit of a heat ghost waving. That's not my reflection. It is my heat being reflected off the door. So to get around that, you just aim the camera at the spot you want to measure and you stand 45 degrees to the side from the target and step around, like do a couple of little steps side to side, measure it, and that way you can make sure you're not measuring that reflected heat. To be honest, the effect on the temperature should be pretty small if it's just a human, but I don't know, maybe if there was an oven or something else hot in the house, it's kind of good to be aware of when you're looking at things. The other thing to be aware of is on unpainted metals, like things like copper pipes, the camera will only measure the ambient temperature, not the actual temperature of the item. It's just a kind of little quirk about how it works. So this was a really interesting example in the training I went to learn about this. They had an iron that had painted half of, and you can see the bright area on the right, which is painted, is showing up much hotter when in real life the whole plate of the iron is the same temperature. So if you want to, for some reason, measure the temperature of an unpainted surface, you can put a bit of electrical tape on the surface. So next to it, I've got a picture here of an example of an unpainted tin can with some electrical tape on it, and there's warm water inside, and you can see how different the reading is. Obviously, don't put electrical tape on something really hot like an iron. It's going to melt, and that's going to ruin all your shirts. All right, so the main thing you're going to use your camera for is to check your insulation. So installing roof insulation properly can save up to 45% or even more on heating and cooling costs. And because heating and cooling makes up 40% of your energy use, and the ceiling is the main source of your heat loss, you can see why this is such an important thing to do. The other reason is most people have access to their ceiling insulation, and if there is something wrong, it is comparatively sort of cheap and easy to fix. There are other heat sources in a house that are not cheap and easy to fix if they're able to be fixed at all. So I'll show you a couple of them too. So this is why ceiling insulation is a big opportunity for homes, and that's why this is kind of the most important thing you can do with your energy audit kit. But look, if you've got insulation, why do you need to even check it? Like, it's already there, like you don't have to worry about it. There are quite a few reasons why you might want to check your ceiling insulation if you have it. If you have a newer house and you have never checked your insulation, there are lots of stories, especially in recently built houses, unfortunately, where the builders have not installed the insulation. Or like things like they've just bought the bats and thrown them in the roof, or probably most commonly, it's just been installed really badly. So you're going to pick that up pretty quick with a thermal camera. The other things you sometimes hear about are where tradies have gone in the roof subsequently after it's installed to do some work, and they've moved the insulation and just not replace it just by accident or yeah. And then also over time, insulation, especially in older houses and with blow-in insulation, it can shift, it can compact and just not be working as well as it should be. So badly installed insulation will look a little bit like this picture here. This was my wall insulation when I had the kitchen renovated. They pulled the tiles off, they pulled the gyprock off the wall, and so that was a bit annoying, but I got to see the insulation behind the wall. And in this particular part of the house, wasn't great. I don't know what's happening in the bottom left-hand corner there. I think they just ran out. There's big gaps there. You can see how it's all squashed up. Even quite small gaps in insulation reduce the effectiveness of the insulation by a lot. So there's some debate around energy efficiency on this statistic, but as a rule of thumb, 5% in gaps in your ceiling insulation reduces its effectiveness by half. So yeah, it is important to get the insulation right when you can. Now, just to illustrate the important point of how important insulation is, these were some pictures I took on a very hot day. It was over 40 degrees. So the insulated ceiling is on the left, and you can see that's 31.1 degrees. And then right outside, same roofing type, taken right after, same roof color, everything. The roofing material there and an uninsulated patio is 47 degrees as well. So that is the very important difference that insulation can make. If I look at my insulation on the left there in the picture, to me, that looks pretty good. I can't see any gaps. Yeah, So that's probably an example of a good insulation. When your ceiling insulation is not so great, it looks like this. So I took this at a friend's house, and in this case, she was cranking up her air conditioning, and you can see how that helps with seeing the difference in the insulation because it's quite dark. And you can very clearly see where the insulation is missing. It almost looks like half a bat has been removed in those sections, and there's almost a 10-degree difference between the gap and the rest of the ceiling. So imagine all of those gaps like lots of little mini heaters in your ceiling and you're running them on a 40-degree day. It's going to make your house really hot. Another great example, which was sent to us by one of the sustainability officers at a council, she used it to audit a family member's house, and that just looks like a whole bat is missing. It also looks like there's gaps between all of the bats. They may just not have been installed closely together as they should have been. Yeah, very easy to see how heat is getting in. If you want to check your wall insulation, you just need to be aware that the camera doesn't work on double brick, only on stud walls, because brick has just got such a high thermal mass, it just sort of makes the temperature all even. I do have steel frame stud walls, and this is a picture of a wall that faces west with the full sun on it in the afternoon on a 40-degree day. And you can see there that the studs are very obvious. The insulation's about 33 degrees and the stud itself is about 40 degrees. So this is something that happens in steel frame houses. If they haven't had a thermal break or some sort of insulation between the frame and the house, I don't even need a thermal camera on a hot day. I can run my hand along the wall and I can feel where the studs are because they're just so much hotter than the rest of the wall. And in winter, unfortunately, we have condensation as well along the studs. But look, not much I can actually do about that now. But if you are building a home, you've got an opportunity to avoid situations like this that are very hard to fix. So yeah, make sure you get advice at the start when you're building your home to make it as energy efficient as possible. Here's something else I picked up when I was visiting my friends' houses. They are both have double brick houses, and on a hot day, I found this strip of heat along the top of the wall, and it was along the external walls only. And the more I thought about it, the weirder it was. I was like, it's not hot air that's concentrated at the top of the ceiling because it's not happening on the internal walls. And all of the walls that it affected had eaves. So, they should be shaded. It was just a little bit strange to me. I couldn't work it out. So there's a fantastic Facebook group called My Efficient Electric Home, which has heaps of experts on energy efficiency. So I popped it on there and they had the answer for me. And it was basically these homes have box eaves where the way the eave is constructed is that the top section only has one layer of brick. So obviously it's easier for heat to get in there. Now, they're supposed to have insulation covering that area so this doesn't happen. But look, these were older houses. Perhaps it was before that was brought in. My point is, if you see something weird and get stuck, that Facebook group is a great place to go and search for potential answers because people have posted heaps and heaps of photos like this asking, what's going on here. You can search for it there or just post it as well yourself and see what people come back with. And it's a great place to start, and then you can research the solution, remembering, of course, that not everyone on the group is going to give you correct answers, but, it's good. It's a good place to get started. All right, so using your thermal camera for air gaps, and this one's pretty self-explanatory. You just use the camera to find the cold spots and block them up. And this diagram from the Your Home Technical Manual is also really great. It's like a checklist which you can use to go around and check things in your house. And so really you usually do this on a cold night. You just walk around, check like windows. If you've got old chimneys, that's going to usually be a source of air gaps. Gaps from shrinkage or from your house settling, gaps around windows. Check if your door seals are all still there. Those are the types of things you want to check. Sealing your home is going to be okay for most houses as they're just so leaky to start off with, especially in Australia. But you do also need to be aware of ventilating your home adequately to avoid condensation and indoor air pollution issues. especially if you're using gas appliances inside. And this is another great argument for going all electric, is those air pollution issues that come from gas appliances. If you're thinking about doing some gap filling, that link that I've put there is a really great one to make sure you get that balance right between sealing up and allowing ventilation. Also a really important safety tip in the Energy Audit Kit manual about getting any gas appliances checked regularly and serviced by a licensed gas fitter. And you can also use your thermal camera to, so that's an example of an air gap. That's where my door seal is not working very well. And then on the right, you can also go around and have a look at your window coverings and see how well they're working. You can see an example of a ghost in that right-hand picture. If you want to get, when you're looking at windows and window coverings, if you want to get technical, you might like to know that the temperature readings that you're seeing depend on the emissivity of the substance that you're looking at. And glass is a little bit different to, say, plasterboard or other materials. So the actual temp reading you might be getting might not be exactly correct, but basically for the purposes of just going around and checking your house, it's not really something to worry about. If you've got low E or low emissivity glass, which is a special kind of energy efficient glass that prevents that heat transfer, you won't be getting an accurate reading from the glass. But if you want to find out more about that, there's a great resource called the Thermal Imaging Guidebook for Building and Renewable Energy Applications, which is available on the link list that I sent. And Kerry is preparing she's actually bought some and she's going to send them out to all of the libraries and CRCs so that can go in the kit, because it's a really great resource for learning more about some of the technical stuff behind the camera. And then when it comes to window coverings, the best thermal performers are things like curtains, thick climate back curtains with pelmets. Honeycomb blinds are also really great. If you're a renter or in a temporary situation, you can also use things like clear core flute, bubble wrap even, or Wren shade is like this reflective kind of product that can help insulate your windows as well. So there, you might check out, and there is a resource there as well for further reading on that. So for water leaks, if you suspect you've got a water leak, a thermal camera can also be handy, because the water is obviously colder than the rest of the wall. And so this was a water leak at my friend's house. It had already been drying for a few days by the time I managed to get there, but you can just see that it looks blotchy. You can see where the water has extended to. So that might be something handy if you suspect you have a water leak. And you can also use it for checking your fridge seals and see you obviously see cold air escaping if your fridge seals are not very good. This is when I took off my freezer and it looks pretty good to me. So halogen lighting. If you have halogen lighting, you might notice with the thermal camera how hot it gets. And that's because this type of lighting is super inefficient. Most of the electricity, the energy that's used, is lost as heat. Until I did the training for the thermal camera, I didn't realize they got to 200 degrees. And then I Googled it and I was like, no, it can actually be even hotter than that, up to 300 degrees. If you have a lot of halogens lights, your average energy use may not be the same as the graph I showed you earlier. Your lighting use might be a much greater proportion of the energy that you're using. In addition, all downlights, not just halogen downlights, but all downlights create a hole in the insulation. So, and the high operating temperatures of the halogen downlights also mean that there's a fire safety requirement for an additional space between each light fitting and the edge of the insulation to obviously prevent the risk of fire. And that's why my friend had those very large insulation gaps. They were all spaces around her halogen lights. So you can see that in the second little picture there. All those little gaps are just halogen downlights. So with them, you've got this double whammy of inefficient lighting and extra heat ingress into your home. So if you've got halogen downlights, it could actually make a real dent in your energy bills if you get an electrician to come and redesign your lighting, replace them with LEDs. And if you still have to have downlights, you can use LEDs. There are LEDs you can get that are safe to use with insulation, called an IC rated LED downlight. If you want to know more about that and what's possible, talk to an electrician. That's important that they do that. And there's also some further information in that link that I've provided there as well. All right, so let's move on from the thermal camera onto the PowerMate. Another really handy device which is used for testing the amount of energy your appliances are using. And it can be used on any indoor appliance that just has a normal old plug. And while it's also fairly easy to use, it's handy to know a few tips to kind of get the most out of it as well. And that brings me to something that's really important to know when you are using the PowerMate, and that is, how is electricity measured? So I think most people have heard of a watt, and they know about a watt because it's what's on a light bulb box. So a watt is how much power your appliance is using at any moment in time. And kilo just means 1,000, kilowatt is 1,000 watts. So you can see down the bottom there, I've got a picture of an LED light bulb box. It's using very little power. It's a 4-watt light bulb. Above that, I've got the nameplate from my oil-filled column heater, and that can use up to 2,400 watts or 2.4 kilowatts. Kilowatt hours is how much power your appliance is using over time. So if your heater is drawing 2.4 kilowatts for 1 hour, it will have used 2.4 kilowatt hours. And if it's using 2.4 kilowatts for half an hour, it will have used 1.2 kilowatt hours. And a kilowatt hour is what's a unit in your power bill. So that's the most complicated part of the whole presentation. Hopefully you followed that. I did put a little summary in the resource sheet as well. So a kilowatt hour and a kilowatt, very easily confused and often confused by a lot of people, but you can see that they're measuring quite different things. And the PowerMate will measure the power use of your appliances in watts and also in watt hours or kilowatt hours. So it is quite important to know the difference. All right, so to get started with the PowerMate, to turn it on, you need to plug the PowerMate into the wall and then an appliance into the PowerMate. You hold down the green run button to clear all the previous data, and you use the menu button to scroll between energy, greenhouse gas emissions, cost, and then also the runtime as well. And then there's another one called meter, and that records a bunch of other electrical measurements, but you don't really need to worry about that for looking at your appliances. Most people can visualize energy use in, how much it's going to cost them to run. So it's important that the energy cost is correct. And so to change that, you need to scroll to cost. You need to hold down menu. You need to press zoom to increase the number and run to move to the next number and so on. There's instructions of that in your kit, but it should be set to 32 cents per kilowatt hour, which is what is the typical energy price at the moment. But obviously that changes each year. So you want to check your energy bill to see what it is at that time. So CRCs and librarians, if you're online, the process to set the cost is obviously quite important, but unfortunately not very intuitive. So it's worth checking if it's set to 32 cents before it leaves the library, and that really helps the borrower so they don't have to go through that process and get frustrated and then just give up. So to then actually start it, you press run again, and then it'll start measuring the energy use. And you want to leave it for a while because appliance energy use might be variable over time. It's not usually consistent, and that's especially true for fridges and freezers because they cycle on and off. So you can scroll through and look at the energy, the kilowatt hours, and the cost by using that menu. The reel up the top is how much energy has been used since the PowerMate was turned on. And then the hour and the quarter and the year are sort of extrapolated based on that. And so the energy use per year is probably what's relatable and understandable for most people. So you see in this case, the appliance is going to cost about $188 per year to run, which is kind of easy for people to understand. So to show you how I might use this in real life, I put the PowerMate on my newish freezer. It's only a couple of years old. I left it on for 24 hours because, like I said, fridges cycle on and off, and the PowerMate needs to stay on for quite a long time to get an accurate reading. Now, the energy rating label said it should use about 177 kilowatt hours per year, but it was actually 234 kilowatt hours per year. And I went, oh, well, that's a bit weird. That's a little bit high. And then I put the thermometer from the energy audit kit into the freezer to measure what the temperature was. And it was just on the low side of the recommended temp. So I had a little dial that I could turn up, and I turned it up just a little bit, like from 5 to 5.5, I think it was. Checked the temperature again. It was still in the right range. And then I measured the energy use again over 24 hours, and it went up to, went down to 185 kilowatt hours per year. So can't get too carried away with those results. Like I said before, you need to keep it in perspective. The difference in this case was only 50 kilowatt hours over a whole year. And then if you multiply that by the cost in your energy, in your power bill, most people it's 32 cents. Over a year, I saved about $17 in power. But I still think that's pretty good. I'm going to take myself out for coffee and cake for that one. If your freezer is using much more than this, it's the same process to kind of go through to see how much it's costing you per year. When I was back in uni, I did an energy audit on an old freezer, and it was using like around about 1,000 kilowatt hours of power per year. And so it did work out that it was using a couple of $100 worth of power, and I did end up replacing it. So the process is a little bit different if you're using an appliance that's only run for a set amount of time, like a washing machine. You just kind of want to measure how much it uses over a cycle and then multiply it by however many cycles you want to, you would normally do in a year to work that out. So people might measure their energy use, but then go, well, what does that actually mean? Is that bad or not? Is this a significant part of my bill or not? How do we know? And so firstly, what you can do is compare those figures to your electricity bill. So if you add up all your bills over a year and say that's $3,000, $188, probably not a huge contributor to your bill. It's not going to be one of the biggest things you can do to reduce your energy use. If you want to know how much it would save you to replace the appliance, you can go to this really great resource, which is the energy rating calculator. And it's super easy to use. You just go in there, choose a model that you kind of think represents what you've got, and you can have a look at the annual energy consumption on there and compare that to what you're getting on your PowerMate as well. And then you can go, oh, hang on, yes, buying a new one, a similar kind of model is going to use a lot less. Then if you've decided, yep, I'm going to buy a new one, you can compare two models that you're looking at and see which is going to be the best option. So here I compared two dryers, which I did for a friend, and my friend used her dryer every single day. So for things like dryers, especially if you're using a lot, the savings can be really large. So I compared between a 2-star sort of normal dryer and a 7-star dryer, which is a heat pump dryer, which is like this really special kind of energy efficient technology. And you can see the purchase price there is $500 for the 2-star and $1,200 for the 7-star. So most people would probably balk at that difference in the upfront cost and go, oh, is it really going to be worth it for me? But you can see that over its lifetime, it well and truly pays off that upfront cost and saves nearly $3,500 on top of that. So that's why this is such a useful tool for choosing like new appliances. All right, so while you're looking at those things, you may as well test your shower and taps as well. And as you saw earlier, that hot water makes such a huge proportion of your power bill, and the water from your showers and taps makes up 38% of an average household's water use. So if you can reduce the amount of hot water you're using by retrofitting your shower with a low flow shower head and your taps with flow restrictors or low flow taps, you actually have the opportunity to not only reduce your water bills, but also your energy bills by quite a lot. So if you've got an instantaneous hot water system, changing your shower head can cause you some problems. And so you want to talk to a plumber about that. But if you've got a gas or electric storage system, it's a great idea to check your shower head to see if they're efficient or not. I thought for years my shower heads were efficient just by looking at them. And then when I checked them, I did find out they were actually using 13 litres per minute. So yeah, I've audited other shower heads when I used to work for local government, would regularly find them using 20 litres per minute. So they should all be using under 9 litres per minute. And so in my house, I replaced my shower heads with this very efficient ultra low flow shower head that only uses about 5 litres per minute. And people say, oh, that sounds terrible. You're going to have to run around to get wet. But it actually has a particular way that it sprays out the water. It feels a bit different, but it's actually a very nice shower, I think. And no one's complained in my house so far. Uh, People are shocked though when I tell them it cost me a couple of $100s for a shower head. But even at a couple of $100s, it paid itself off very quickly. Because when I did an energy audit for a uni assignment, and this was the biggest action I could take in my house. It saved about a quarter of my energy use. So that's a big chunk. And I worked out it would take about 6 months to pay itself off. And the easiest way to test your shower head is with a bucket. You just hold the bucket under the shower head, let the water run on full for 15 seconds, measure the water that you've got, and then multiply it by 4, and then you've got the litres per minute. That's a really great link to a YouTube video. It's only a minute long, and it's very succinct and shows you how to test a water shower head. So that's in the resource list as well. And then in your energy audit kit, you have this special cup that allows you to test your taps. It's not possible to test your shower heads with these, otherwise you're going to get very wet and they're not big enough. But yeah, it's a great little tool. You put it under a tap. You need to make sure that the tap, the spout, goes into the water, turn it on full, and then you slowly open the little handles. And when you get to the point where the water is flat on top, you'll see a little marking on the side, and that's the flow rate of your tap. So another super handy, super easy little test to do at home. And finally, in the kit, there's this thermometer, which has these little handy markings on it, which show you where your heating and cooling should be, where your hot water should be at, and your fridge and freezer temps should be sent at. So yeah, I told you earlier about how I used it for my freezer. You can also, yeah, use it for all those other things as well. You can use it to test your hot water, and there's a great demonstration of that on the audit kit instruction video, where you just get the water running as hot as possible. You fill a cup and put the thermometer in, and that way you can see if your water is too hot and might be using too much energy to heat. So hot water needs to be stored at 60 degrees or above in a hot water system to stop bacteria growing, but it should be mixed with cool water with a tempering valve so it comes out of your tap at 50 degrees. So that's kind of what you're looking for there. That wasn't a requirement until like 1998. So if you've got a super old hot water system or something might have gone wrong with yours and you're getting, it's coming out hotter, that's when you should get a licensed plumber out to have a look. Firstly, just because of safety and scald risk and things, but also because it's using, might be using more energy than is required. All right. So for in-person workshops, when we end up doing this later down the track, we've got some few little some inexpensive DIY little demonstrations so people can try it out in real life to see how it works. I don't know, might be something you want to do in your libraries. And then if you're people who are borrowing the kits or you've looked at all of the things that we've gone through in the kit and the instruction manual and you're still stuck on why you have big bills, might be time to call in an expert. And a home energy efficiency audit is sort of done where a professional comes out to your house and they will assess where all of your energy is going and give you personalized recommendations. So Switch Your Thinking runs a program called Rewards for Residents, which is like gives discounts on different sustainability products. That includes a discount for a home energy audit. And also a NatHERS assessment, which is for when you're building a home and they can review your plans so you can get things right from the start. And you're not going to be stuck like me with a giant steel frame that acts like a heater in my wall on hot days. So if you're in a Switch Your Thinking local government area, you can have a look at the discount there, or if you just want to see who offers those services, they're there as well. But it's very exciting because as part of the energy efficiency pilot program, just by attending one of the workshops or by borrowing a kit and completing the feedback survey, you can also win an energy audit. So that's happening until the 15th of March this year. So really great thing to promote to your communities because it closes soon, but really great opportunity. And of course, terms and conditions apply, and have a look at the Switch website for more details on that. More information. So in the kit is obviously the energy audit kit and the instruction manual. That's a really great place and essential reading when you're doing using the energy audit kit. Another great resource is the thermal camera manufacturer is FLIR, and they've got a guidebook, thermal imaging guidebook for buildings. Kerry from Switch Your Thinking is organising a version of that to be sent out to all of the libraries so that can be included in the kit because it's got some of that really great technical stuff behind it for people who like to get into a bit more detail. The Your Home Technical Manual, that's available in a hard copy, and it's going to be great for all libraries to include that in their collections, but it's also available entirely online as well. So you could go in there and there's all sorts of got everything in it really. There's another great book called My Efficient Electric Home Handbook, and that's by the guy who started the Facebook group, the My Efficient Electric Home Facebook group. Kerry's organising that for that to be sent out to all the libraries as well, so that can be included in the kit for people to read. Another great one is the Big Switch, which looks at sort of the energy transition more generally and going all electric. That's written by the guy who started Rewiring Australia. So it's a really good one. And of course, the Facebook group, like I mentioned before, it can be a good starting point for your own research. All right, so there is a QR code to the workshop feedback form. Oh, Kerry, do you mind popping a link to that in the chat as well? And of course, at the very top of the chat, if you scroll up to the top, you should be able to see a link to the resources page that I put together. So I'll leave that there for a little while. But now we've got a bit of time to answer some questions. So I will just quickly scroll back through the comments and see if there's anything here.
Thanks, Sarah. If anyone does have any questions that you'd like to ask Sarah verbally, just put your hand up and I'll enable you to speak. Otherwise, pop them in the chat.
Yep, just put them in the chat. Someone has actually asked to think about the Box Eve question. Lee, did that answer it? Oh, I see. So you've got in your roof, there is a gap around the eave space, so you can see light coming into the attic space. Is this a design flaw or is it required for a airflow? Yes, that is a question. I'm not sure of the answer. We have to go away and have a look into that for you and see. Your Home Technical Manual might have the answer to that when it comes to eaves. Have you have any? Oh, and sorry, I forgot to mention that the thermal camera guide for building applications has just been popped on the Switch Your Thinking website as well. If you want a link to that, I don't have that link in the resource document. I've got a link to a bigger document that talks about renewable energy as well, but Kerry's got a very special one that's just for buildings. That's on the Switch Your Thinking website. So go and have a look at that as well. Where can you find information about the shower heads that save water? You can just kind of Google them, like they're called ultra low flow shower heads, and there's a few different options out there. Yeah, it's the best advice I can give on that one. Just wondered if white roofs walls are important too, and double glazing. White roofs, yes, it's become increasingly sort of recognised that they are helpful when you're constructing a house. If you can get a light coloured roof, that does help. Double glazing, yes, extremely effective. I don't talk about it a lot because it's just super expensive, especially to retrofit. But if you're building a new home and can afford double glazing, then it's an amazing thing to include. Fabulous. Any other questions? What resources are available for renters specifically? Kerry, do you have any ideas on that?
We can provide a workshop specifically for renters. I think there are some resources on our website that covers off on renters, but nothing like in terms of just a brochure. A lot of the stuff that we suggest in our energy efficiency guide is certainly applicable to renters.
Mm. Yep. I mean, you could definitely still use the energy audit kit on a rented home, and then I guess it's about advocating to your landlord for the upgrades. And it could give you good information that you can use to say, look, this is actually a really big problem in this home. It's giving you that evidence and that backup. Uh, yeah, and then for things like windows are always a big thing for heat. And there are some temporary things that you can do that don't damage the home that can prevent that heat ingress. And that was what I was talking about with like bubble wrap and like clear core flute, temporary shades on the outside of the windows as well. Um, yeah, there's some, if you can prevent the heat from your windows, that's probably going to be a big thing for you. Oh, yep, great. Kerry said that if you're in a rewards for residents area, they've got some discounts on shower heads. Yeah, wonderful. Anyone else got any questions? So how effective is low E glass versus double glazing? Now you're testing me here. Double glazing, I think, would be much more effective, but the place to go to check would be your home technical manual in the lighting section. That we're talking about low E glass versus double glazing. Um, yeah. Uh, Okay, could you please quickly go over the bubble wrap on Windows tip again? So what I've seen people do with that is they have like a spray bottle with like a little bit of detergent and water. They spray it on their windows, and when it's really hot or it's really cold, they just put bubble wrap up on the windows, and that kind of sticks temporarily to the window, and it's just a really great insulation. Is tin foil helpful? I think it would be helpful in that it's reflecting some heat, and it's also just blocking the heat coming in. There's another, we do something. The most effective thing for your windows is to shade it from the outside, prevent the heat from hitting the windows in the first place. So if you can get shade cloth or something to shade the outside of your window, that's going to be the number one thing to do. And then the second thing would be to look at, yeah, like bubble wrap or curtains or window treatments to try and provide that sort of second layer of defense against the heat coming in. Um, Wonderful. Hopefully that answered all your questions. Hopefully that was useful. Please do fill in the feedback form, and because this is the first time we've run this workshop, so it'll be great to find out if there's things we can improve. And yeah, that's it from me. Did you want to add anything else, Kerry?
No, just thanks to you, Sarah, for another great presentation, and thanks for everyone for tuning in. If you do have any questions following today's session, please send through at energy@switchyourthinking.com, and we can respond to those directly. Yeah, really appreciate your time, and if you can, please provide the feedback. All that sort of stuff is very valuable to us moving forward. Appreciate your time. Thanks.